Artsee, a game about art, about galleries. The players will build beautiful galleries with amazing masterpieces. They will attract visitors to those places, and then, I believe, they will murder them. Yes, there's a mechanic in the game in which you remove the visitors to your gallery, and it really looks, and everybody in my group had the impression that you're pretty much murdering them. If you look at the cover, maybe that is what these two people are really thinking. They're realizing that the gallery is going to collapse the wall over them to build a new wing of the gallery, and they're going to be sacrificed to the god of architecture. Boy, this review has already gone really dark, and we haven't even started. But, you know, with Halloween approaching, that maybe is acceptable. But I'll show you what I mean here about the sacrifice of visitors. Yes, you have a number of visitors. Each player has a pool of those. Then the game is played with cards. You have starting cards that have a black edge, and then regular cards. The regular cards are shuffled together and then divided in two decks of approximately equal size. As you can see, the back of the cards is different. It's in different colors, and unfortunately the back is only coded by color, not with symbols or stuff like that, making the game not fully accessible to colorblind players, because actually seeing the back of the cards that the players have is pretty important for the strategy. As for these cards, they represent different works of art. As you can see, the top here, you have a selection of those, and there are four categories: the blue one, yellow, red, and green, and these ones are coded also by art. Then at the bottom of each card you have a specific category, which is called the feature category, which is the one that corresponds to the back. If this one has a red back, I know that the feature category at the bottom is red, yellow with yellow, and so on and so forth. You also have arrows that can point in different directions, right or left, as you can see. You start the game with two cards that are randomly assigned to you, and you place them one next to each other, and they represent the wings, the initial wings of your gallery or the section of the museum that you're trying to expand. Later in the game, you will play more cards to expand your galleries. When you play a card under a previous card, like so, you offset it so that you can still see all of the paintings, but the feature category, the new card that you place, covers the previous one, so that each section of your gallery only has one feature category. And the one that is visible is the one that is considered active. In the game, you can also choose to add not to existing sections of your gallery, but actually to expand and to start new ones. So you will start with 2, rewind time, and you start with 2 and with a hand of cards. And then, well, it's time to start taking turns. During a turn, a player first will play a card from their hand, and again, they will play it to expand the gallery or to start a new one. Then, each other player, not the active player unfortunately, will get to place a meeple from their personal supply and place it on every card, on every section of their gallery, which shows the feature category. If, for example, I just place that card there, which is green, and my neighbor has these two galleries here, these two sections here, they're showing green, then my neighbor will get to place a meeple on each of them. Yes, the active player does not get to place meeples, and so this is what might happen, for example. Then the active player will score points. The active player will score points, points based on basically the card that they just played. First, you count points. You score 1 point for each painting of the feature category, or the card you just played, that the arrow on the card is pointing to. And yes, you can point to your own cards, or you can also score cards belonging to the opponent. If, for example, this is my situation here, and I play this card, well, everybody will get to place a meeple on a red visible door, if they have it, a red visible feature category. Then this arrow will score me 2 points, because the arrow is pointing to 2 red paintings. If I just played this one here, I also get to score 2 points because the green feature category has an arrow that points to my friend's section, which is adjacent to mine, that also has 2 greens. So basically, you go to the adjacent category indicated by the arrow in a section that may or may not belong to you. Also, as you play new cards, and suppose that as other people were playing, they played several red cards. So every time that they play cards, remember, I get to place one of those. And later, I decide to play a card on it, on a card where I have meeples. Squish. And here's when it gets gory, because you squish the meeples. When they're building galleries, no one can hear the meeples scream. And you score a point for each meeple that you cover from your section. So basically, by playing this card here, I'm scoring 3 points for sacrificing 3 meeples to the god of museum architecture, and 2 points because I have a green arrow pointing to a section with 2 green icons, so that would be 5 points. And that is again when the game starts looking like you're doing massive human sacrifice. So that's pretty much the general idea. First you play a card, other people will get to benefit from it by placing meeples, and then you will earn victory points. As you earn those points, I score 5 points, players will acquire those points and put them in their personal supply. In fact, as we play the game, became familiar, pretty much when a player plays a card, you announce, I'm playing green for 5. You announce the category so everybody can place meeples, and you announce how many points you score. Next player goes and playing red for 2, and so on and so forth. Also, after you played a card, you may be able to acquire a masterpiece. There are these 4 stacks of tiles, 1 for each category of painting. You place them at the beginning of the game in descending order of value from 9 to 5. The number of dots is the number of victory points that you score. You get the tile on top of a stack, the one that is visible, if in a single turn you're able to score that many points. If, say, I have a section with 6 green icons, I have 3 guys here, I squish them with a green arrow pointing that way, 6 from here, 3 from here, that's 9 points, I get to claim this tile. And, or actually it will be this tile here because I did it with the green, did I not? So I get to take that tile and I can put it in between sections of my museum, or even just next, that is adjacent to the external, to the leftmost or rightmost section of my museum. That means that that simply counts as a normal extra icon. So if later I place this card here, I get to score. That would give me now 3 green points, because that arrow points to 1, 2, 3. So actually that you can score from both directions, so that is really neat. So it gives you points right away, and that is the case. As you can imagine, the hard thing is to get the early ones, but when somebody gets the 9, it's probably later in the game where people have some decent engines, and then getting the 8, the 7, and the 6 becomes easier and easier. And that also really is a big element of the game, because having these things, not only does it help you score points right away, but also scores you points at the end of the game. Summarizing: play a card, other people get meeple, score points from the meeples that you squished and the icons you are pointing to with your arrow. Then you draw a card from a deck of your choice. You continue like this until both draw piles are empty and all players' hands are empty. At that point, you count the points that the player have scored, plus you score extra points based on how many different masterpiece styles you have, and you can only have 1 per type. And so if you have a single masterpiece, is 1 point, but if you have all 4, that's 10 extra points, which is super sweet. I still have to see that happening, but I've seen 3, for example. You add those points for the final scoring, and at the point the player with the highest total wins the game. Well, this was a pleasant surprise. Mind you, I expected a good game from the rules and the possibilities that the game seemed to have. It turned out to be a very good game. Everybody, by halfway through the first game, was like, "Wow, this is really wow." You expect a light, simple filler, but there's just more to it. And then it was very late at night, and everybody wanted to play it again, and so the game night ended up ending a lot later than it usually does, so everybody exhausted but happy. And when everybody's tired and they still want to play another game, you know the game is really good. We all liked it. What is it that it has more than meets the eye? Well, the placement of the cards. In a certain sense, it's a lot of the game is in that. Which is, of course, ideally, you want to have these ginormous sets that are scoring a lot every time that you score them. So you want to have, ideally in an ideal world, which is not the one we live in, two columns that they keep pointing towards each other, scoring a lot of stuff. But then you may not get the arrows that go in the direction that you want. Also, another thing is that if you have two ginormous columns, which will score you 10 points, 8 points every time, your opponents are just probably are going to be freeloaders that are trying to get advantage of that. So after a while, you have your really good scoring things, and you have lateral wings around which are less powerful, pointing towards those so that you can score them, but your opponents can only score off those little small wings. Then, of course, every time that you use a small wing to score a big one, what happens? That one becomes bigger. So after a while, I say, dang it, this one also is particularly good, and now my friend is taking advantage of that. So that is a good, interesting dilemma. How much you want to spread and how much you want to go in depth. Really, I seem to notice that 3-4 columns is the average to do well, but I guess you can experiment with different things. Spreading out a lot means you have a lot of chances of getting meeples, because maybe you have all 4 colors there, and I've seen that happen, and that situation where a friend was just picking up a meeple because he knew he was going to put it on one of the 4 cards. He just didn't know which one yet until the next player announced which one. So that is interesting. But then in order to cash those in, well, every time you need to play a card, and every time maybe you cash in 1 or 2, as opposed to maybe you have a single column of a color, but that hits a lot, and that by the time the game comes around, then you can pick up 4, 5, 6 meeples with a single card, which may allow you to get a masterpiece if somebody does play that card. And that's another interesting balancing mechanism, another interesting trade-off. If I put a lot of cards of a color there, that allow me to build that super awesome combo, and I'm just waiting for people to play cards of that color so I get meeples, well, maybe there aren't many cards of that color available anymore because I use them. That's another interesting trade-off. So what a subtle game with such interesting decisions in a game that is that simple. You play a card, you murder some meeples, and you score. Very simple. Even with 5 players, when players know what to do, the game goes very quickly. Again, red for 5, blue for 3. And that's pretty much how long it takes to play a turn when players know what they're doing. So the game can still move pretty fast and yet still has a lot of interesting decisions, a lot of interesting elements. It feels interactive, even if the interaction is that you're looking at other people's cards and you're hoping for them to get your certain cards, but still, so it's interacting, in the sense that you are fighting against each other, but if you see what they're doing, and if you see that they have a wing which is quote-unquote unprotected and you can exploit that, is also particularly good. So it's interesting. It's a game where you never really attack each other, but in which it is very important to pay attention to what other players are doing. It feels more interactive than it is at first. It's not confrontational, but it's definitely not a multiplayer solo either. It plays quickly. It is fun. It has a lot of interesting decisions that revolve around such a simple, lean engine. Artsee, very happy, very excited with this game. It was fun to play, and I definitely think that this game is gonna see some more time on the table soon, because everybody loved it, and frankly, everybody told me they can't wait to play it again.